award-winning interior designer, set decorator, and television personality based in Los Angeles. He's the design expert on Netflix Hack My Home and a regular on the Drew Barrymore Show. He has also recently released his debut book, The Forever Home. Along with Mikkel, help me to welcome to the stage Karen Wolf, Ahmad Abuzanat, and Tamara Day.
Thank you. Well, hello, friends. Well, Ashley, first, thank you for such a warm welcome. And good afternoon to you all. We want to say thank you for being here, and also a huge thanks to KBIS for having us here and bringing this all together. There's been so many designers and builders and industry professionals. I made so many friends this week, so this has just been extremely exciting. So for those who don't know, I am interior designer Mikkel Welch from Netflix Hack My Home, as well as the Drew Barrymore Show. But today it's not about me. I have some fun panelists up here who I've gotten to know over the past couple of weeks. And our session today is going to be titled Room to Room Rhythm, Creating a Visual Journey Through the Home. So, you know, as a designer, I think, you know, ultimately residential designs, whether it comes to kitchens and baths, they're often the most, I would say, highly designed, but also some of the most heavily used spaces in the home. You know, they frequently anchor the visual language of an entire project. But even the most beautiful kitchen per se, or the most beautiful bath, it can feel a little bit disconnected, if you will, if the surrounding spaces don't relate to it. So today we're going to do a deep dive, and we're going to discuss how designers create continuity, flow, and how we do this throughout the home while transitioning between spaces, how that's handled, and how to create some cohesion overall with the spaces. So each one of my esteemed panelists over here, I'm going to have them first introduce themselves, because I always love it when the panelists can introduce themselves, because they're going to do it much better than I can. But I'm going to have them share a little bit about themselves and their journey and what shaped their work and where it is today. I will say in my practice, as probably with yours, we all know that great design isn't just about the individual room, right? It's about the way we connect. You know, we have so many things to talk about today, and we're also going to cover things such as scale, color direction, how tactile materials create harmony between kitchens, dinings, and living rooms. And don't forget the outdoor space. You know, that's one of those untapped markets that we often forget about. So we're going to talk about that today. But I'm going to stop blabbing, and we're going to jump right in. And I think I'm going to throw it to my friend Tamara first over here on the end. I know your story a little bit, but can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and where you are today?
Sure. I'm Tamara Day. You might know me from Bargain Mansions on HGTV and Magnolia Network. We've done 6 seasons of our show, my dad and I. And my history is I'm a farm kid that really likes design. I grew up in great houses that were really, really empty, and I think my love for design came from a lack of design that my parents had, and really wanting a better aesthetic inside the home. And so not only did I learn the DIY side of design, because my parents did everything themselves, and we were the help, I would say, for my parents growing up. So I learned how to build, but then I also taught myself design elements through all that, and that's how Bargain Mansions came to be, is that not only can I build the thing, but I can design it well also.
So it kind of starts, it feels like, you know, design was in your bones, if you will, right?
Exactly.
At such an early age. So when you have that situation, how do those, like, thinking back to like your early renovations, right? How do you feel like those experiences have shaped your career now? And, you know, how does that continue to influence your work?
Gosh, when I think back, what I wish I had known is that this was an industry, right?
Yeah.
Like, as a kid growing up in Western Kansas, I had no idea that design was a job that you could do. And I look back at my college years, and I got a degree in communication, but if I had known that I could have gotten a degree in design, 100% I would have done that.
Isn't that like the story for everyone? Like, I'm a marketing degree. I feel like we all fall into design in a different way.
Exactly, yeah, and I just had no idea. And I think the beauty of social media now is that
Yes.
kids know what the options are, so there's a lot more knowledge around what we do.
Yes.
And I just wish I had had that opportunity. But I think those moments in college when I was like living in my own little apartments, I was painting the walls even though I'd have to paint them back, and I was designing it even in those times. And when my husband and I first got married, he had a big history of renovating houses through rental properties. He bought his first house when he was 16. And
At 16?
yes.
Oh, wow. I need to grow up and be like this man in my next life.
Yes, through college he had, I think, a dozen houses that he managed. And so when we got married, our first house, like, I was wearing tennis shoes to sleep because it was so bad. But we were living in it and renovating it, and I learned a lot about design through that. And I got to do the fun things that my parents never did. And that's when I really learned how much I love design, and it started taking off from there.
That is amazing. We're going to come back to that 16-year-old who approached the house. Well, up next is Ahmad Abuzanat.
Yes.
I got it right. I've been practicing in the back. So, Ahmad, my question for you is going to be a little bit different. Well, first, before I jump into your question, first, tell us about yourself. You have stunning design.
Yep.
But just tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey to how we got to these stunning designs.
Well, I also fell in design. I studied hospitality management, and once I started working in the field, it wasn't satisfying, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go back to college and study design.
Okay.
So I did the full program and immediately fell in love with it. And you know, I grew up in Lebanon, so I moved to the States in 2011, and then 2017 moved to New York. And I didn't get hired by any design firm, and I've sent more than 200 resumes within 5 months.
Oh, wow.
And not a single response, and I was like, I should just do this on my own. So started my firm in 2017, and here we are.
Wow.
That's amazing. You know, it's always intriguing to hear from, I would say, international designers, you know, the process. But how would you say your international background has shaped your approach? Because I'm sure it's a very different approach than, you know, someone who was born here in the U.S.
So I would say, in terms of, you know, what we do, a lot of the work in Lebanon is custom made. Like, we really heavily do a lot of custom because we have access to craftspeople and trades that are more accessible budget-wise. So I really didn't learn to source. I learned to design every element of the space I'm working on. And then we would source things like fabric or hardware, but you know, and then moving here, that was a big shift for me, and I think it pushed me to always try and go and find more vendors that are not mainstream, if you want, or they're not easily accessible to the trade, just because in my mind, like, it cannot be something that people find. You know?
Yeah.
Growing up, again, like, you know, I grew up in my grandma's mountain home. So, and then moving to the city, like, you know, just seeing that also contrast of lifestyle, just 45-minute drive away, was mind-blowing. And if you've never been to Beirut, it's really not because I grew up there, it's really one of the most charming cities. It was occupied by the French, so we have the French architecture everywhere, but then the modern architecture started happening, and it's a small city, so it's all side by side. And you learn to appreciate that language, right, of like tension and contrast, and it doesn't have to be one thing or symmetrical, you know, just learn to appreciate all of it.
I'm curious to know if you drew any inspiration from Grandma's house.
Actually, Gibbs Bay in New York, when I designed the bathroom for the Gibbs Bay show house, which was on the screen a few minutes ago, my grandma's house had a lot of rust color.
Okay.
And she grew up in a family of farmers, so, you know, farming and greens and, you know, stables and stuff like that. So, you know, the bathroom was kind of like an homage to that because it was all brick, it was rust and kind of like a warm gray tone. And I added shutters to the window instead of window treatment. So, you know, I just kind of like picked up some of those elements.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love when you can bring in some of those personal moments. And speaking of personal moments, my dear friend Karen Wolf here, who kept us laughing on the Zoom calls.
I don't even know what was funny.
But Karen, I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, about your business, and, you know, how you got to where you are right now.
Okay. So
So I'm Karen Wolf from K+co Living, and I started out actually in fine arts, and I was encouraged to go into that profession because, like Tamara, there was no real interior design when I started out. It just didn't exist.
Yeah.
So at age 5, apparently, I climbed up on a ladder while my parents were sleeping and took every food dye out and every single like marshmallow fluff, which was very popular then. Anything you could think of in that kitchen, and I decorated all the cabinets, and that was it.
Right.
My parents were like, okay, you're going in that direction. And so I was pushed and encouraged, and I went down that path and figured out that it wasn't enough for me. I loved that it was tactile and that you learned about color and theory, and there is some strategy to fine art. You're building a composition, and then from that composition, you're taking that and layering texture on top of it, which you do in design.
Yes.
But I needed more, so I went and got my master's in consumer behavior and marketing and learned the why, and became a trends forecaster for a large catalog company at the time, and really but encouraged buyers, and I was very young at that age, I was like probably 23, 24, as to what they should be purchasing in the marketplace and why, based on macro trends. And that's how I experience design today. I like to connect the emotional to the design and really understand the reasoning behind why a space is being used.
Yes.
And in general, I also think that as a person, your personal style and energy,
Yes.
comes into play in your designs. And I really, I like to be warm and approachable and casual and friendly and funny. And so all of those things really come into our homes, and you can see that they're mostly light-filled and have, a sense of play and air and levity, because at the end of the day, anybody who has the ability to do this is very fortunate.
Yes, no, I
Including our own selves when we do our own homes.
I agree. But what's nice about having these conversations, each one of you talked about something that started at home, which is
Yes.
so interesting. And it's always nice to have these conversations and you learn these common threads between each other. So I love to hear that. So now I'm going to jump into the hard questions because I'm going to put these people in the hot seat. But I will say, as I ask the questions, I want to do it a little bit differently. I will ask a question, but feel free to jump in as you like. I'm not just going to pose the question to one person. So the first question that I have is, when you walk into a home for the first time, what is the first thing that your eye notices? Do you see that change when you first walk into the space, if it's a kitchen or, if it's an open layout or a living area? Like, where does your design brain go to think when you initially just walk in and you are seeing that space for the first time?
I would say flow. Like, my first approach is always the flow of the home, and does it make sense when I walk through the door? Is there an obstacle that I'm dealing with? Is there a sight line that makes sense? Is there a point of view that makes sense? Or what do we need to change to make that happen?
For me, it's natural light. That's something that, maybe because I live in New York and most of the projects are apartments, right? So sometimes we have an issue with natural light, and that also dictates sometimes, the color scheme and the textures and the materials we're using, just so we can work with that as well.
And for me, it's flooring. So I look at if there's continuity of floor and wood in the space, and whether or not, and how that's going to, from the ground up, because we design from the ground up, how that's going to affect our cabinetry, since we're at the KBIS.
No, I love all three of those answers. I think for me, listening to what you just said, Ahmad, I think lighting, for me, now that I think about it, is one of the key things that I pay attention to, but I'm also a 15-year New Yorker, so my brain goes a little bit different when it comes to that, but it's just interesting to hear how all three of you answered that. So let's talk about kitchens and baths for a minute. So oftentimes, the kitchen and bath can offset the tone for the rest of the house. How do you establish a design language in these spaces that can carry into adjacent rooms?
So I would say, I think finding out what the client wants is the number one thing always. And are they willing to be a little bit bold? Do they want a neutral palette? And that's going to inform so much. Like, are they a maximalist, And in the kitchen, we're going to do a colorful kitchen with
Yes.
great hardware and statement lighting, or are we going to do some nice, beige Taj Mahal kind of feeling, right? And that can flow the rest of the house. You can set the tone right from there.
How often do they use the kitchen? Right, like
That's a
That's
good
a good
question.
one.
That's a really good
That's always
question.
like a thing for me. It's like, do you really use the kitchen, or is it a show kitchen, or if we have a chef kitchen, also like to what extent are we doing the main kitchen, right? And in some projects, the kitchen is strictly a visual statement because they have a prep kitchen in the back. But in most projects, again, like no, it does dictate the rest of the spaces. Yeah.
And I think, if it's a design language for that space, so if we've established the point of view, how are we carrying those elements throughout the rest of the spaces? So we have to create a core palette and core materials, and then think about how that flow is going to happen and how we're going to, in a subtle way, repetitively repeat those elements in an open space especially.
Yeah, something interesting for me, I have learned with my design language per se, that I treat anything behind a closed door oftentimes, or I shouldn't say anything, but the bathrooms, I treat them like their own separate world. And I've been leaning into, I don't want to use the word whimsy, but I like an element of surprise where there can be some cohesion all throughout the space. But every once in a while, I feel like, there's a closed door that we don't go into that much, and I feel like that's an area where we can have a little
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I totally agree. Dude, laundry rooms, bed spaces, and
the room.
baths.
Yeah.
Go crazy.
Right, the sky is the limit.
Also basements and kids' rooms.
Oh,
for
exactly.
sure.
You know what? It's also a smaller space that's manageable for clients to be bold, and even if they're not comfortable, right?
Yes.
Because they're like, it's contained, it's small, it's away.
Yes.
Because as much as they think they're designing them for themselves, they also think about people who are gonna come and see it.
Yes.
And when you're taking a risk, they're thinking about that. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because the next question that I was going to ask is a very tricky one. So when designing a whole home per se, what does that process look like for you? And is there a room that you typically start with, and why? Especially like for that client who says, I need you to take over the entire house. Which at first, it's exciting, but it's overwhelming. What's that process for you? What's that starting line for each one of you?
I can start that. So we definitely start with all of the public spaces, which typically is, may not be one room, it's like all of the open areas,
Yes.
which is typically the first floor in most homes. And our process internally, when we are designing, after we do the intake, we know what their style is, now we're down to like nitty gritty,
Yeah.
granular process of how do we design in-house. We always start with our flooring, because like I said before, we start from the ground up.
Yes.
And then we layer on, so we might take out 3 different concepts for the 5 rooms, lay them all out, and they're all somewhat interchangeable.
Right.
And then we layer on all the textiles, the textures, the cabinetry, and the hard finishes, and then we tweak it, and then we work our way back down to the rug. So there is like floor to up, and then up, back, down again. And that is our process. We like to say that all the rooms are friends and they need to have a conversation with each other. And when we lay it out in front of our clients, we show them. They can see in a flat lay the entire flow of a space visually, and they start to understand what a point of view is and what a whole home consistency looks like.
I like how you said friends. I always say cousins, but it's the
Yeah.
same like synergy there.
Yeah.
I start with bathrooms basically because
Okay.
I think I like for every project to have like each bathroom has its individual personality, and when clients insist on having cohesion as well, it can be tricky to make them different yet similar at the same time. So I feel like for me, bathrooms take more time to design, and I just want to get it out of the way. And because it's hard surfaces, I also think there's something more solid about that. That once it's anchored, it just anchors the project, and it just trickles down to like other rooms, neighboring rooms, friends, others.
You sound like a checklist guy. You want to get like
I trained with architects for 10 years.
Yes.
So I was never tasked to take a project and think about what colors are you working with.
Right.
I was tasked to go look at the mechanical and electrical, and then once you get done with that and figure out the layout, you're gonna start designing pieces of furniture. So I'm also thinking how I build pieces of furniture as I'm trying to do something, and that's I think that's why.
I need you on my team because the first thing I go for is the
Okay,
bathroom.
for high.
Like all that bathroom, it'll come later.
I'd love to.
I think I'm somewhere in between all of this. I'm like, I just start with the inspiration boards, and my inspiration boards are super cluttered. I'm like looking for pictures and images and ideas, and I just have one board and I'll throw 100 ideas on there, and then I weed it out from there. I'm like, these all feel like this person, but where's the cohesion between these inspirations? And I start to weed it out that way, and then once I've weeded that out, I'm pulling out what was the element in that picture that really spoke to me about that client. Like what was it the drapery, was it the plumbing, was it the cabinet face? And so I start pulling the elements that way, and then piecing it together. And I'd say the very first thing we always actually pick is the flooring. And I think it's one of the main ways you can break things up and make it feel less cohesive is when you start messing with the floor, and just pick one floor all the way through the house. We don't need transition space.
Well, I've asked you all some easier questions now, but now I want to kind of transition into some not so fun topics because, as designers we come up with issues along the way. So what would you say are some of the most common design decisions that disrupt a visual flow between the kitchens and the baths and your surrounding living areas? Because it definitely happens anytime you work into a project. There's going to be something that disrupts.
Right. I mean, I'm going to go back to the flooring thing. Like if you have tile in the kitchen and a different one in the entryway, and then hardwoods in the dining room and carpet in the living room, like it's just chaos in my mind. Yep.
You go.
Okay, I have a lot. We do a lot of, I did have a lot, but I'll see what I remember right now. So we do a lot of new construction, and we work with some spec builders. And so we run into these problems a lot. So I would say transoms. I cannot tolerate transom windows. They just destroy kitchens and bedrooms, and bottom line, sometimes we get windows in our actual showers, and we have a lot of problems with that. So transom windows are an issue, and then I'll let you go, or we'll come back to me.
Well, actually, when you spoke about this, I can think about one project I was working on, but it's a house, it's in Brooklyn, it's not a big space, but then she wanted an open kitchen, but she also wanted to be able to close it. And it's not a big space to do hidden panels, so you're actually cutting off the space, and to me it was awkward that it's not a door, but it's an opening slightly larger than a door, and I tried to fight it over and over, and there's a reason it didn't get photographed. That's another challenge, right? Like sometimes you just have to comply to what the client wants, because at the end of the day it's their home, and we choose whether to show it or not.
I have another one.
Yeah.
Not thoughtfully considered HVAC. It's a killer.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you're with soffits and then support beams that architects don't take care of in advance. All right, don't get me started.
No, but you brought up so many things you all did in that moment, because there are those projects that unfortunately we can't photograph,
And we're
because of those issues. I mean, you can only Photoshop so much away. So
Yeah.
occasionally we run into those issues. So, well, with that, what would you say are some transitions that are naturally overlooked? Like when you're working in that design, what are some of those transitions that are overlooked, and how do you approach that transition, for instance, from like your kitchen to your living area, or from your bedroom to your bath, so that those spaces feel connected and not so like abrupt?
I really like having, from even if it's an open concept kitchen into family space, I like having, even if it's just a 6-inch separation wall, just to define the space and kind of frame it. I think that really helps. Say this room stops, but you still have the open flow and concept. And it gives us a stopping point for wallpaper. Like it drives me
that's a really
crazy
good one.
when the wallpaper where does it ever end? It just has to go on and on forever. It's so hard.
We get a lot of new construction, very large open spaces. I do a lot of coastal design, and you want full-on views of the water.
Right.
So we look at the ceiling and we try to define space with the ceiling, and we create different vignettes that way. And then we work our way back down, and then we create separation walls, and we use beams and headers, you know, to then try to define space. But that's often something that we're handed over as the interior designers to solve that issue.
I'm going to speak about a smaller detail, hardware. I think, you know, there's an opportunity to carry the same material or texture that you use throughout the home, and even though it's a small detail, it's a subtle way of just transitioning between spaces and making things connected all together.
No, and that totally makes sense, and it actually kind of feeds into my next question, which was actually going to be about continuity through a home. Because I know that's one of the, it could either be one of the easiest or the most difficult things at the same time. But how do you create like that synergy and that continuity through a space when you're designing it without making all of the rooms feel cookie cutter and copy and paste?
For me, it's texture. I'm not as much of a pattern person, but I'm more of a texture person. And then I think, again, it's like one of the ways where even if it's repeated over and over, it doesn't get overwhelming. So that's how I approach it.
I would say the same thing. Texture in the, like a grass cloth or a string cloth, like adding those different textures and tones makes all the difference.
And I would say for us, we use, I don't know if I believe in like rigid design rules, but we do have one rule that I do ascribe to, which is the golden rule of 3. So I do take a material and I think about repeating it at least 3 times in a space. And then I think about the planes that material is on. So like, is it on this plane level at my eyesight? Is it here? And is it here? And how is it moving through rotationally? Where is your vision going from low to medium to high? And that could be in any color, that could be in any metal, that could be in any texture. You know, it's basically any material that you're weaving through. In order for it to really make sense, it does need to get repeated, and it needs to be repeated in a subtle way.
Can you repeat that again? Because that was like an Oprah aha moment.
So this is where my fine art background came in, okay?
So what was that rule of 3 that you love?
So I really do this. And Noha is sitting there in the audience with me asking me. I believe in the rule of 3. So it is basically where you take a color, you do it in styling also. So think about when you create a vignette. Everybody says like high, medium, low. Groupings of 3. It's the same thing when you're repeating material in a space, and if it's a huge open space, how are you weaving that color, that finish, that wood, the metal, the texture in, and how many times are you seeing it, but not just at this plane level. You want to be able to see it on this plane, and on this plane. So it's at every eye, like you call it low, medium, high vision level or plane level. And then you're moving it around the space so that you're creating a circular flow from your eye. Not just like how you walk through a space in a circular way, which is the best flow, but it's the same thing with the movement of the material.
I love that.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to write that one down. So let's transition the conversation over to clients just for a second, because I know oftentimes the clients have tons of questions. One of the popular questions that we were asked, so clients often ask whether private spaces need to follow the same design rules as public spaces. How do you approach cohesion in bedrooms and baths compared to more visible areas of the home? Where do you allow that variation, and where do you stay consistent?
I mean, I personally speak a lot to my clients about their well-being in their home. And the reason I do that is just to always remind them why it's as important to invest in these private spaces as much as they're willing to invest in the show space, right? That's public. And that usually leads to making the decisions of, again, in most of the cases, elevating everything that they thought they would install in those rooms. And by doing so, it just automatically then, okay, like we're doing, you know, again, like the same level quality, the same level finishes everywhere, and it just continues throughout the space.
I like to think of it as like, who are you designing your home for? Are you designing it for yourself or your friends?
Right.
And are you designing, like, when a client says, well, we have to have a big dining room because we host Christmas. oh, okay, so you're going to design a room for one day of the year. Your whole house is going to sacrifice for this one day,
Right.
versus like, how do we make it feel more fluid, and like in your main bedroom, like how does this make you feel? You spend half your life in your bedroom and your bathroom, right? Like
Yes.
this is for you. It's not for everyone that visits you.
Yeah.
And so designing for what you like and what you need to feel healthy, to feel well, to feel rested and happy in your home.
That's important that you say that. I laugh because what I didn't announce is I did a stint on The Real Housewives of Atlanta, and it was interesting as I was designing for one client. I began to learn they all wanted to do the next, and they would request certain things, and I'm like, but your house isn't designed that way. Like, this doesn't even make sense. So
Yeah.
it is really designing to that client in that space in that house. Sorry. I cut you off.
No, it's okay. So just to add to the conversation, I think part of the question that was also how do you get the consistency
Yes.
in those
Yes.
interior spaces as well. So once you've defined what the client's dream is, and hopefully they're able to execute what they really want in that space, you still need to have the bathroom and the bedroom talk to each other.
Yeah.
So the tile, and we use the tile often as our flooring, how does that look in coordination with the rug that's going into the bedroom? And so we're treating it the same way, but just privately versus publicly.
I love that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the other question that I have, I'm gonna stay on consistency for a second. So as designers, what would you say is like that one design decision that you make consistently that, people may like subconsciously notice, but it's kind of like your stick. That's that one thing that you constantly do. But you do it across the board to have cohesion throughout each one of the spaces.
For me, color is really important. Like I feel like expressing. I mean, when you're looking at these, my rooms are super colorful, and there's a little bit of whimsy in everything we do. And I think making sure that flows, not just in the private spaces of the bathroom, the half bath and the laundry and the mud space, but that there's little moments of like something weird happening that's unexpected that gives conversation in each space with the art or a color or something like that. So I think threading that through the home is important for me.
So I would say we soften spaces. So we're soft modern. We look at, kitchens, bathrooms, they tend to be hard spaces. How can we bring warmth and layers and textiles into that space? So we intentionally try to create an area, like a landing area of softness.
Okay.
And that could be in softening the curve of the actual millwork, or it could be in creating a banquette, bringing in the window treatments, greenery, plaster finishes, anything that has like a tactile and organic, modern or soft feel to it to help bring warmth to the space.
To that point, I look a lot for young artisans as much as possible, and I think adding small objects that are really unique and handmade in every space, and it could be anything. It could be a vase, it could be a lighting fixture, it could be a Japanese cutlery brand that we haven't seen in the US, right? But whatever they make. So that again, that's the idea of like conversation pieces throughout every room in the space.
I love that. And I feel
Takes
like
a lot
you're
of
going to
time.
share your list with us at the
I
end
mean,
of the...
I do have a list. And you said you're gonna hire me.
There you go. All right, well, I have another fun question for you. And this is actually going to be the last question, and then we're going to do a fun, quick lightning round before we open it up to questions. So think about your career as a whole, some of your favorite projects. Would you share with the audience one example of a time when you introduced a contrast or something, that broke the visual rhythm and ultimately strengthened your project? Something that just, you wouldn't have typically have done this, but it just helped change the game.
Is it something that we typically also wouldn't do on a project?
Yeah,
We
it
introduce-
could totally be something.
When I did Gibbs Bay Dallas, there was my first show house, and Gibbs Bay is a big one, so I wanted to do something that A, was different than what I typically do for clients.
Yes.
And then B, I went with the idea that it has to be something that people would have a very strong emotion towards, whether they like it or not. Like, I didn't want anyone to pass by and be like, and walk away.
Right.
I wanted them to feel like if they love it, they love it, but also if not, I wanted them to hate it.
Yeah,
right?
like leave that
I'm
man.
like, you're gonna go either this way or this way, not in between. And I went all out on color and pattern, and I started with the rug, so flooring, and I did this floral rug that also shows on the screen at some point, and everyone who knows me and my work was like, who are you and what's going on? And I think it was one of the most successful spaces because I pushed myself in that direction,
Yeah.
but then it was really well received, so I feel like, checked a lot of boxes.
There you go.
I'm struggling with this one. I don't have a
Really?
solid answer.
You have some
Oh my
strong
God.
pieces in your book. I'm sure there's something.
I mean, like, I think a common thread that I have in all my houses, there's almost always black for how colorful I actually am in my projects, like this purple mauve dining room, like I love that. Almost every project has black in it somewhere that pulls together in a big way, whether it's the whole exterior. I love a black house, like my favorite. And I think just those pops of moments like that crazy fabric in a pretty neutral space really makes it like, wow, like stops the eye and gives you something interesting to look at.
Yeah.
And I would say for us, we're less about pattern as well, we're more about texture. So scale is probably how we exaggerate, for contrast rather than through color or pattern. So we've pushed the envelope in a hood previously, where we've taken the hood all the way up the 22 feet ceiling.
Wow.
And then it was out of metal, and then we popped a blue color on it, and while blue seems like it would be daring, and it was a little bit daring, it was woven through, yet again, the space, so it didn't stand out as out of place, but it was just the proportion. Same thing with a fireplace. Like, we did a fireplace that was also about 20 feet high and brought it all the way up. And while it was in the same tonal textures and tone, it just stood out because of scale.
I need to work with you more often. She's got these 20-foot ceilings up. I'm working
We're
on
not
the
in New
wrong
York
project.
City. We're in the coast.
We need to move. I know, right? All right, well, now that we got the hard questions all answered, I'm going to do a fun little lightning round. So, can't take a long time to answer these questions. I just want you to spit out the first thing that comes to mind. Ready? All right, the one material or finish that helps unify a home.
Marble.
Marble? Oh, I love that. I would say the wallpapers, all the textures you can add with wallpaper.
Wood flooring.
I knew you were going to say flooring. What is one common mistake designers make when trying to create flow?
I think that clients make the mistake more than the designer.
Oh, passing the buck.
Well, I run into this often where we're hired to do one or two spaces.
Right.
And there's a house in my head right now where they only wanted the first floor done, right? And I just saw them list it. Kansas City's the World Cup is coming, and people are renting out their houses, right? And I just saw this house I did listed on Airbnb, and I'm like, you're right. The first floor looks amazing, and then the second floor is 1980, and people are going to be really disappointed. I think clients often dictate what you can do for consistency in that regard. Like, we can only do this much, and so we blow it out on these spaces, but the rest of it is stuck and dated.
Yeah. I'm going to ask the question one more time.
Okay.
So, what is one common mistake designers make when trying to create flow? Oh, no, that was not the question. I'm sorry. The question I posed was what material finish helps unify a home?
No, you did that one.
Okay, never mind. Then that was the second question.
Okay.
It was the common mistakes designers make when trying to create flow.
Right. We don't want to throw us under the bus, right?
I mean, why not?
Maybe stripping out too much in order to open up a space rather than trying to define a space to create the flow. So it's like the opposite thinking.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say it's designers, it's just architects, people in the industry, anybody.
Yeah, and I would echo the whole completely open flow plan.
Yeah.
You need some definition, even if it's
Yes.
the definition that you were talking about. Yeah.
And then last question here. This is one designers always love to answer because it's about clients. What is the one thing you wish clients understood about designing a whole home rather than just focusing on one individual room?
How much time do we have?
I
It is a
have an
process. It is a process. It's going to take time, and they just need to understand that it really is a process.
I think I'm going to echo the time thing. Like,
Yeah.
if you're in a hurry to get this done, it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
It's not going to be cohesive. It's not going to. There's going to be headaches beyond belief when you're in a
Mistakes.
hurry, and mistakes, and it's just, I think, a train wreck when you hurry.
And I would say we try to tell our clients it's not an item-based approach. So
Right.
don't get stuck on the price point of a coffee table, or look at it as a whole, and or the wow of a piece versus not the wow of a piece. Sometimes
Yes.
you need a non-wow to balance the wow.
Yeah.
And it's holistic. Just look at the whole thing. Let us finish and explain why you need X to do X.
Yeah, and I would say to finish that off, I would say what you see on television is often not true. Behind the scene, there's a team of 20 contractors getting things done, to get these rooms done so quickly. So design also involves some patience. So speaking of patience, thank you all for being patient with us. We're gonna open the floor up. We've got about 4 minutes to answer any questions. So if you have any questions for the audience, we would love to hear them. Don't be shy. They don't bite. At least I don't think she does. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And also, we will be sticking around later as well. So if any questions came up that you don't feel comfortable asking right now on the stage, we can answer those as well. But I want to thank my panel again. Thank you for your insight today. This conversation has really been enlightening, and we hope you all enjoyed it. And we look forward to seeing you throughout the rest of the day, and just continue to enjoy the last day here at KBIS. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. See you.